Good evening, everyone. It's two. Just telling a small group of people who were with me at the reception that these days I'm frequenting universities across the world. But when I was supposed to go to the university, I stayed out. So what kept me out and what did I do with my time, really? At a very early age, I realized that I did not know a thing about anything. So I started paying… When you truly realize you don't know anything, you start paying attention to everything. So I fundamentally started paying attention to just about anything. Anything could hold my attention. I could spend hours and hours just staring at a speck on the floor. I've spent many weeks just looking at an ant. I don't know if you pay attention to such small things. An ant is a fantastic piece of technology. If you're willing to pay enough attention to it, you will see probably it's the best moving thing on the planet. And as I paid more and more attention, I realized the problem is just in our ability to perceive. Our instruments of perception are not really good enough to know things as they are. Our instruments of perception of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting are good enough to survive. They'll help us to survive. But if you really want to know something, not the way someone has explained it, if you really want to know it for what it is, then you will find the instruments of perception that we have are not good enough to know anything. For example, visually, if you see this part of my hand, you can't see this part of my hand. It's not just about a hand, even if you take a grain of sand, you cannot capture it fully at any time. I spent days, months trying to see if I can stretch my perception in some way. With this, I came to a place where when I was 10, 11 years of age, sometimes I went away into the jungle by myself and I learned to see in the night. Even today, I never ever use a torchlight when I walk in the darkness. I realized that if you raise your attention to a certain level, you can see very clearly where most human beings cannot see. Like this, I started stretching my perception, and what I realized was that most human beings, when I was supposed to be in the university, I parked myself outside in the garden because I didn't find anything interesting happening in the lecture halls, because they were just reading a book. When I parked myself outside, I found people started coming to me, students. I was a student too, but I was just 18, just over 18 maybe. I just parked myself outside, we had a large garden, and people started coming to me with all kinds of problems. Education stuff, parental problems, boyfriend, girlfriend problems, all kinds of problems. As I listened to all these problems and gave my own wacky solutions, I realized I was the only freako who didn't have a problem. Not that everything was perfect, but I never saw it as a problem, but everybody seemed to have a problem. And as I paid more attention to these problems, I realized the only problem is most human beings in their entire life don't even learn how to handle their own thought and emotion. I'm asking you, is there any other problem in your life except that life is not happening the way you think it should happen? Is there any other problem in anybody's life, I'm asking? It's not happening the way you think it should happen, that's the only problem, isn't it? Well, you could think in a million different ways, but most people don't learn this, how to handle their thought and emotion. And the amount of suffering, the volume of self-torture that happens on the planet is quite unbelievable. Maybe at this stage in your life, you're not so exposed to human suffering. Every day I meet thousands and thousands of people. The variety of suffering that human beings have created for themselves is unbelievable. There's really not one thing on the planet that they cannot suffer. They're capable of suffering just about anything. You see, if you could not get into the university, you would suffer. If you get in, how much suffering? If you're poor, you suffer. Poverty. If you become rich, you suffer the taxes. They're not married, they suffer that. You get them married, everything. Just show me one thing that they don't suffer. They are not suffering life. They are suffering their own cerebral capability. Because this is a new happening. This brain mushrooming up like this is a new happening in the evolutionary scale of things. Did Charles Darwin come from this university?
Possibly.
Did he? From Oxford? Is it so? Okay. You know Charles Darwin, I'm making it simplistic, but Charles Darwin went about saying something like this: a deer could have become a giraffe over so many million years. A pig could have become an elephant over so many more million years. But a monkey became human rather quickly. Yes, so quickly that anthropologists believe there must be a missing link somewhere. The DNA difference between a chimpanzee and you right now is only 1.23%. 1.23% is not much of a difference, isn't it? Physiologically, that's how close we are to a chimpanzee. But in terms of our intelligence and awareness, we're worlds apart from a chimpanzee. Or in other words, human beings have an intelligence for which they don't have a stable enough base. They're suffering their own intelligence all the time. If you took away half your brain, most human beings would live peacefully. Right now, a whole lot of people have made peace the ultimate goal of their life. That means what you need to do is take away half the brain. So they don't know how to handle their own intelligence, which has become a phenomenal problem on the planet. How much suffering means unbelievable. You may call it stress, you may call it anxiety, you may call it varieties of depression, you can come up with more exotic names if you want. Essentially, you're suffering your own intelligence, that's all that's happening. So when we say inner engineering, today we know that in the external world, If something has to work well, it has to be well engineered, that much we understand. Whether it's a bicycle or an automobile or an airplane or whatever else we use, or even a phone, it needs to be well engineered. What is well engineered is reliable, works well, does things that others cannot do. Why is that not true with this? Engineering essentially means to arrange it or to make it the way it works best. Is it not important that this happens to the human being, that this is arranged in a way that it works best, that you don't trip on your own intelligence? Somebody else is causing suffering to you. When was the last time somebody poked you with a dagger? Hello? Nobody did. Nobody paid such attention to you. But what I'm asking is, how much of suffering is actually coming from outside? Unless you're in a war zone or you have an ailment or an injury, except for those things, how much of suffering is actually coming from outside? Most of it is just on self-help, isn't it? So the problem is, what is a tremendous possibility has become a problem. This blossoming of our cerebral capability is the biggest thing that's happened on the planet. Human ability to vividly remember every experience of our life and human ability to wonderfully project these past experiences as a imagination of tomorrow, projecting into the future, this has become the source of trouble for most people. What happened 10 years ago, they can still suffer. What may happen day after tomorrow, they already suffer. This means you're suffering something that does not exist, isn't it? Hello? If you're suffering something that does not exist, I don't know, there must be some psychiatry students here. If you are, you know you have a case. People are suffering things which don't exist, they're only suffering their own thought and emotion. They're only suffering their own memory and imagination. The problem is, when we came as human beings, we didn't come like other creatures. For all the other creatures, nature put two lines. Within that, they live and die. But once you came as a human being, there is only a bottom line, there's no top line. This is what human beings are suffering. That nature did not put the kind of limitations it exerted upon other creatures. That's what human beings are suffering. For every other creature, stomach full, life settled. Once you come as a human being, stomach empty, only one problem. Stomach full, 100 problems. This is not because there is something wrong with our lives. This is not because there is something wrong with the situations in which we exist. If you look at it that way, compared to any other generation ever that lived on this planet, we are enjoying better comforts and conveniences than ever before. We cannot even debate that, isn't it? It's 100%. But our ability to make the experience of our life pleasant is so taken away that if you want to feel pleasant, you need chemicals today. To be peaceful, there are chemicals. To be healthful, there are chemicals. To be blissful, there are chemicals. These are all human possibilities, these are not from somewhere else. These are all things human beings are capable of. But pleasantness is not a goal by itself. It's not a destination. It is a necessary ambience. If this human being has to find full potential in life, it is very important it's in a pleasant state of experience. There is substantial medical and scientific evidence today that only when you're in a pleasant state of experience, your body and your brain works at its best. There's no doubt about this anymore. Your success in the world is essentially determined by your ability to harness this body and this brain. When you yourself are an issue, how to sort out any issue in the world? This is not because of issues from outside. Is it okay, can I tell you a joke? Hello? You're all so serious, eh? I saw all those racks and racks of books, it looks like you're carrying it on your head. On a certain day, a lady went to sleep. In her sleep, she saw a hunk of a man standing there, staring at her. Then this man started coming closer, 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 closer. He came so close, she could even feel his breath. And she trembled, not in fear. And then she asked, "What will you do to me?" The man said, "Well, lady, it's your dream." What's happening in your head is your dream. Now the thing is not that life is not happening the way you want it, even your dream is not happening the way you want it. If your dream was happening the way you want it right now, to be joyful, is it a problem? Hello? To be pleasant, is it a problem? No, even your dream is not happening the way you want it. If you cannot even run your dream the way you want it, how will you ever conduct your life the way you want it? When everything is accidental, anxiety is natural. The very way you think and feel, if it is accidental, anxiety is very natural, isn't it? Unless this is well engineered, this is how life will be. We think some people, oh, this is a happy person, this is an unhappy person, this is a peaceful person, this is a miserable person. No, it's not like that. You know, I was to speak at Tel Aviv. I'm flying out of Atlanta in the United States and I'm to land there in the morning and speak at 6:30 in the evening. Due to some flight delays, I land at 6 in the evening. I'm quickly changing in the airport and rushing towards the venue. Because in these 34 years of being out doing this work, I have not been late to a single appointment. I ended up here an hour early today. Somebody told me some terrible traffic, so I came too early. So I'm rushing and I'm famished. You know, I'm flying an American airline, there's nothing edible on the plane. Though I'm super hungry, I rush towards the venue. And to my amazement and joy, this doesn't happen too often, I'm speaking in a fine restaurant. I thought, life can't get better than this. When I'm so hungry, where else do I want to go? Then as I enter, people are greeting me and one man comes up and says, "Shalom." I ask him, what does it mean? He says, "This is the highest way of greeting." I said, "That's your opinion, what does it mean?" He said, "No, no, no, this is really the highest way of greeting." "All right, but what does the word mean?" He said, "It means peace." I said, why would peace be the highest way of greeting unless you're born in Middle East? In South India, somebody comes up to me in the morning and says, peace, I'll say, what's wrong with you, huh? The moment we deprive ourselves of something, slowly it will become the highest value in our life. To be peaceful, to be joyful, to be blissed out is not difficult. But because most people are looking so grave, oh, young people, I don't know why. I must tell you, I was speaking at the Princeton University. Except for 4-5 faces among over 350 faces that I was sitting there, 4-5 faces were lively. All others were sitting with a long, extra long face. I looked around, why in a university particularly people are carrying extra long faces? Maybe it's the weight of knowledge or something, which I don't understand. Then I asked them, I just look and say, why all these people over 30 years of age are carrying such long faces? One lady stands up and says, they're all married. I thought people are getting married to multiply their joy. If people are getting married to multiply their misery, there needs to be a law about it. Yes Because it is in the fundamental aspiration of being human that you want your life to be pleasant. If you become pleasant in your body, we call this health. If your body becomes very pleasant, we call it pleasure. If there is pleasantness in your mind, we call this peace. If it becomes very pleasant, we call it joy. If your emotions become pleasant, we call this love. If it becomes very pleasant, we call it compassion. If your very life energies become pleasant, we call this bliss. If it becomes very pleasant, we call it ecstasy. If your surroundings become pleasant, we call it success. Only to create pleasantness in our surroundings, we need the cooperation of other people and forces around us. For pleasantness of body, pleasantness of mind, pleasantness of emotion and pleasantness of one's energies, it is 100% yours. Hello? I know this is the last thing you have to endure today. It is 100% yours, yes or no? Pleasantness of body, pleasantness of mind, pleasantness of emotion and your energies is 100% your making, isn't it? Pleasantness of the surroundings depends on various forces that take skill to manage. This is just a question of looking at how this is done within you, how this human being happens. I'm asking you, do you agree with me that this human mechanism is the most sophisticated gadget on the planet? Hello? I'm asking you, have you read the user's manual? Just by accident, something will work. It doesn't matter what you acquire. You can acquire knowledge, later on you can acquire money, you can acquire wealth, but if you don't know how to keep this, everything will go waste. As a generation, we can see this. Compared to people, how people lived here 100 years ago or 200 years ago, and today how we're living here, the level of comfort and convenience that we have, we shouldn't have a thing to complain, isn't it? But we are not just the most comfortable generation ever, We are also probably the loudest whining generation ever. Because we got Facebook and Twitter and whatever else, People used to whine in their neighborhood, now we whine globally. Not because something wrong, we are having the best time ever on this planet. Do you agree with me? As a generation, we are having the best time ever at a great cost to every other creature on this planet. For every little thing that you and me are enjoying right now, a worm, an insect, a bird, a tree, an animal, every one of them are paying a tremendous price for every little convenience that you and me are enjoying right now. We are literally making a bonfire of this planet. But bonfire is for joyful people. Others should be at the funeral pyre, isn't it? Yes or no? Miserable people are seen around funeral fires. Bonfire is for those who are joyful and having a party, isn't it? Either we must stop the bonfire or at least we must be blissed out. One of these things we must do, otherwise everything will go waste upon us. I think she's given me a certain amount of time, I'm going by that. Open to question.
Well, thank you very much, Sadhguru. I have a question based on this state of internal peace and being void of stress and being void of worries. Where do you draw the line between that peace and between what is apathy?
Apathy?
Yeah.
Let me ask you a more fundamental question. If you do not even know how to be good to yourself, would you know how to be good to someone else? You're someone who tortures yourself every day. Would you hesitate to torture other people? Without even knowing you would do it, isn't it? To know how to be good to somebody, you are really good to someone only when you're joyful. Is that true? Hello? When you're joyful, are you not a wonderful human being? No? What is this? You on talking terms with me or you have a problem with me? You on talking terms with me? I'm asking you a question. Is it true that when you are joyful, you're at your best with people? When you are feeling frustrated, angry, miserable, you could be nasty to people? This is true with every human being on the planet, isn't it? 20% of our time, resource and energy are spent in the prisons in India and a little bit in the United States. People keep asking me, Sadhguru, why are you spending so much time with these criminals? We barely get to see you, but you're spending time with all these hardcore criminals. I don't see any criminals. All I see is every human being is in pursuit of their happiness. The man whom you call as a criminal is also pursuing his happiness. It is just that he pursues his happiness far more vigorously than you. In pursuit of your happiness, you willing to stand in a line, he jumps the line, that's all it is. Yes or no? That's all it is. But he is also in pursuit of his happiness. You're in pursuit of your happiness means, obviously you're not there. If your life shifts from being in pursuit of your happiness to an expression of joy, you don't have to worry about apathy nor empathy, because these are natural things, these are not values that you have to take on. If you are in a certain state of pleasantness, you being in empathy with everything is simply natural for you. Have you noticed this? When you're joyful, you're willing to reach out and do whatever is needed, bend backwards and do it if necessary. But when you're little angry or frustrated or depressed, can we get you moving? Oh, no. So, peace can never lead to apathy. If people are into a drugged sense of peace, yes. But if they have arrived at a pleasantness of experience, not because of something else, simply because they've learnt how to not mess themselves up. One who knows how not to mess himself or herself up, such a person, you don't have to talk about apathy nor empathy, because it is natural for life to respond to whatever is happening around.
What you were saying about criminals, that quite sort of humanizing take on criminals, relates to your sort of universal view that all people can unite regardless of religion, regardless of borders. But do you not think people need markers of identity, sort of being naturally tribal?
There is a tradition in India. Now that you're in the university, I must tell you this. Before we start education for a child, education was started only at the age of 12, because we believe that till a child is 12 years of age, he must just eat, play, sleep. He should not be burdened with anything else. Today, some of the studies are coming out and saying this: if you burden a child's mind with too much information too early, in many ways it becomes a stunted intelligence. The idea is to grow the body and the brain to the fullest level, then put it to work. There is an Indian farmer, a southern Indian farmer does this all the time. You know, we are a mango country. You eaten a mango?
Yeah.
Indian mango?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Otherwise, you would have missed life. Mango is our religion for 4 months in a year, okay? So, when we plant a mango tree, within 12 or 18 months, it starts flowering. There is a temptation that if you leave it, it'll become fruit. But a wise farmer plucks out all the flowers for the first 3 years, he won't let it fruit. Because a mango tree, if you allow it to fruit early, that one will never grow to its full size. So first 3 to 4 years, they rip off all the flowers because they don't want it to fruit and become a stunted tree. That is true with a human being also. So at the age of 12, when they're initiated into education, we did one thing, that because education was seen as an empowerment, first thing is to change the identity of the child. As a little child got identified with parents and family and community, whatever the culture around. So first step before education is, you must take on a cosmic identity, a limitless identity. Because empowerment should not happen to a limited identity. Because limited identification is the basis of all crime. Limited identification is the basis of all horrendous things that human beings have done. But when they were doing it, they thought they were doing the best thing. Most horrendous things. Even now, everybody is debating about ISIS, especially when I'm in United States, there's no other talk except ISIS, in the election campaign also. But what we need to understand is, they think they're doing a great job. Yes or no? They really believe they're doing God's work. The consequence may be horrendous, that's different, but they believe they're doing the best possible thing. This is what limited identity does. Once you identify yourself with something limited, then in the name of goodness you will do most horrendous things. You've seen a dog peeing all over the place. He doesn't have any urinary problems. He's building his kingdom. Yes, it's all right for him, because that's how he is made. He needs territory all the time. But once you become human, there is another dimension of intelligence within you which wants to make all barriers. If you do not get children at an early age to get identified with that dimension of one's intelligence, there's one dimension of intelligence in you which is talking about self-preservation. When you think of self-preservation, you will try to build walls around yourself. Walls of self-preservation that you build today are also the walls of self-imprisonment of tomorrow. So if you identify with something limited, you will tend to build walls. People get elected on that today. But there's another dimension within a human being, whatever you are, you want to be something more. Doesn't matter what you become, you still want to be something more because there is a longing to expand. There is a longing to become boundless in some sense. It doesn't matter where we set the boundaries for a human being. The nature of being human is, the moment you become conscious of a boundary, you will like to break that boundary. So there is something within a human being always longing to become boundless. If you do not identify with that, and if you empower human beings with education, technology, capabilities, it will lead only to destruction because of limited identification. So tribes existed that way because at that time the only thing was survival. They could not think of anything else. I think a time has come we need to think beyond that. But in the name of family, in the name of community, in the name of race, in the name of religion, in the name of nationality, or in the name of a football club, we become like tribes once again. It's time, we evolve.
So you mentioned technology there, and I'd like to link that to what you were saying earlier about how we're in the best position compared to any of our ancestors to enjoy life. But do you not think things like technology and how economically driven our worlds are make it even more difficult to find peace despite our improved surroundings?
Technology is not making it difficult for us. In fact, it's made our life very easy. But as I told you earlier, because we have not figured how to handle the basic piece of technology, which is the human mechanism. You have a supercomputer, but you don't have the keyboard in your hands. That's your problem. You're somehow trying to make it work, it goes crazy. So, tell me, has technology made our lives easy or difficult? It's made everything so easy, isn't it? You guys have not seen this, but I'm telling you, just 20 years ago, if we have to make a phone call, we had to break our fingers on those black phones, okay? I would keep phone call day, okay? Once, maybe 2 or 3 times in a month, phone call day. On that day, I make 150, 200 calls. My finger would be breaking up. Today, if you just think about it, your phone calls who you want. Is it not easy or difficult? It's easy, but I'm telling you, it doesn't matter. You create a heaven here if you want. People will suffer that also, because they are not suffering what's around them, they are suffering their own mind. They are suffering their own intelligence. If you're suffering your stupidity, it's okay. You're suffering your intelligence, that's crazy, isn't it?
Last question from me before we go over to the audience. You've spoken of yoga as a gift to the world, but many resent what they see as Western appropriations of yoga, as sort of the ancient spiritual practices that Western people are selling and profiting from. What do you say to these criticisms?
See, yoga is a very profound science, but it finds… people start, Like for example, electromagnetism is not something that most people understand on the planet, but everybody is using a phone, all right? Everybody is using all kinds of gadgets. They don't know a thing about the science behind it. They may be using it for something very profane, not anything profound. That doesn't make the technology bad, that doesn't make the science behind it in any way contaminated. Similarly, the yogic science is a very profound science of… it's about exploring the mechanics of being human. Somebody uses it to cure their backache and they think they've made it. It's unfortunate, but what to do? See, if I give you an airplane, the way the Oxford is made, this village, suppose I park an airplane in one of these places. Suppose you don't know the concept of flying, you just saw this and you thought this is some kind of an automobile and you want to drive. But these two ugly things going to hit your buildings all on lampposts. So you decided, you came up with an innovation, you chopped off both the wings and started driving this airplane around. I'm sure you'll be a popular guy out here. Everybody thinks you got a great car, but someone who knows what it means to fly sees an airplane with chopped off wings, he will cry. Well, when I see the yoga that's being taught around here, I feel like crying, but I've learned to laugh at everything, so I'm okay. So is it a good thing? No, but maybe this is how they start. This is how they start, because that is where their mind is. Children start with everything in a certain way, and then maybe they will slowly mature. So right now, yoga is in a childish form. It's not the way it should be. It's not representative of what it is. But I believe even doing that wacky little yoga that they're doing, they'll have some benefit. When they have their benefit, they may come to me. I'm waiting. See, I've waited a long time now.
Okay, I'd now like to take some questions from the audience. So if you have a question, put your hand up high and wait until the microphone gets to you. Could we go to the woman in the second row there? If you could wait for the microphone, please.
So you're talking about achieving this inner state of happiness. So what are the ways of achieving it actually besides yoga, or are there any other ways? Because obviously we all live in busy and sometimes very hard life, and sometimes it's really hard to feel that constant joy and happiness, you know, because many times we suffer and struggle. So what are the ways? Can you describe more in details the ways and approaches to achieve this state of happiness, this state of joy? Thank you.
Being happy is not an achievement. Do you remember when you were 5 years of age, someone had to make you unhappy. Today, someone has to make you happy. Somewhere you reverse the entire equation of life. Do you remember? When you were 4, 5 years of age, you were bursting with exuberance and just joyful for no reason. Nothing need to happen, you're just happy. So I'm saying being joyful is the square one of life, it's not an achievement. It is a fundamental ambience that is necessary if this has to function as a normal piece of life. Otherwise, this will be screwed up life. Yes, because sitting, standing, people are suffering. If something happens, they suffer, nothing happens, they suffer even more. What is hard about your life, I'm asking? There's nothing hard about it. It is just that you're not equipped for life, that's all. If you were born like any other creature, the moment you dropped out of your mother's womb, you would be ready, on. because it was a simple process. But once you come as human being, because the possibilities are so many, there is a certain period where you need to incubate yourself into becoming capable to handle this life. And the most important thing to handle this life is, you know how to manage your own body and your mind, isn't it? If you do not know how to manage your mind, would you know how to manage anything in your life, I'm asking? Don't try to be happy. It is just that your body and mind should take instructions from you. If your body and your mind took instructions from you, would you keep yourself joyful or miserable? What's your choice, I'm asking? Joyful. Whatever you may want… See, what you want for yourself is 100% clear. What you want for your neighbor may be debatable, but there is no doubt about what you want for yourself. You want highest level of pleasantness for this one, isn't it? When the choice is so clear, why is it doesn't happen? Simply because, as I said earlier, you have been given a complex gadget. If you were given a simplistic nonsense, you would have managed. Now this is a very complex mechanism. It takes little more attention to make this work right, otherwise it'll work against you.
Another question, please. Go to the gentleman at the back over there.
Thank you. My question is about what you spoke about.
If you can hold the microphone a little
Yes.
closer.
My question is about what you spoke earlier about limitation and lack of limitation. Can you talk a little bit more about why not attaching yourself to any identity will naturally lend itself to the good parts of life or to the altruistic parts of life? Why can't something horrible or horrendous come out of a person without any attachment to identity?
Tell me, someone who is not identified with anything, not caring for anything, but consciously not identified with anything, what horrendous things have they done on the planet till now? The most horrendous things have been done by those who are strongly identified with their race, with their religion, with their nationality, with their communities. Yes or no? Someone who is consciously not identified with anything, what horrendous acts have they committed on this planet? And when? It's just not possible in the nature of things. You do things because this is yours, that is not yours, isn't it? You cannot kill this because this is yours, that is not yours, so you can do wretched things. There is… see, the fundamental reason why this, like what he mentioned earlier, the need to form a tribe of your own is, our modern education systems are relying too heavily on human intellect. When it comes to human intellect, your intellect, would you like it sharp or blunt? Make a choice, I'm going to bless you. Would you like it sharp or blunt?
I don't think I have that choice.
If you had a choice, I'm giving you a choice.
Sharp.
Okay. You would have almost missed that opportunity. That's blunt. Now, essentially, human intellect is like a knife. Whatever you give it, it tries to dissect. This is the only way human intellect can explore anything, dissection. It's all right. I'm sure in the science laboratories, the biology laboratories here, you're dissecting frogs, you're dissecting other creatures. and you're really excited about how the heart is pumping and the liver is working and everything. A frog, believe me, never excited about these things. So if I really want to know you, I must dissect you because I want to know you. You think this is the way to know anything? By dissection, you will know the physical aspect of it. You will never know what it is, isn't it? With this kind of scientific knowledge, with all the knowledge that we have acquired and many technologies that have evolved out of it, out of which we are benefiting, we still can't figure one atom in its entirety. This is a fact. We still don't know a single atom in its entirety. We know how to use everything in the world, but we do not know what it is. Simply because we are approaching with intellect. Intellect is a cutting instrument. It is a powerful survival tool. Without it, you would not be able to survive. It is a very powerful survival tool. Though we are not built as strong as other creatures, we still dominate this world simply because we have this knife that we can cut up anything into pieces in our mind. This is one way of knowing. This knowing is good for survival. But if you want to know life the way it is, you cannot know it this way. Or in other words, there are other dimensions of intelligence within you which have remained unexplored. For example, is it true? What did you have for lunch? Or dinner is up? What did you have for dinner? I just saw a kebab place on the way. So you have a kebab, minced meat, we don't know what creature. Let's say a goat. You eat a piece of goat, in the next 3 to 4 hours' time, or maybe 5, 6 hours' time, this goat becomes a human being right here. Yes or no? The body that you carry is just the food that you've eaten, isn't it so? Yes or no? So what was a goat becomes a human being in 5 to 6 hours. She is capable of doing that. If you go back to your alumni, if he is Charles Darwin, if you ask him, for a goat to become a human being, how long does it take? He will talk in millions of years. Yes? But look at her. She can make a goat a human being overnight. Fantastic or no? There is an intelligence within this which can turn a goat into a human being overnight, can turn a piece of bread into a human being, can turn a carrot into a human being, can turn an apple into a human being. Is there an intelligence like that within you or no? Hello? Is it there with you?
I'm not sure. I don't…
You have a digestion problem? Okay, let me tell you. If you're alive, you have it, all right? If right now the problem is, this intelligence is happening without your awareness or consciousness being involved in it. If you could consciously access this dimension of intelligence which can turn a goat into a human being overnight, everything about you would become magical, not miserable. This is all. It is just that you're using only survival tools and trying to make a life out of it. You're taking a knife and trying to stitch life. You will only have it in tatters at the end of your life, believe me. You must… all of you should do this when you're young. If you go to your hospice or wherever, when people die, 85% of the people on this planet, when they die, if you closely observe them, you will see there is no fear, there is no pain. Only thing is they're bewildered when the last moment comes, because suddenly they realize at the final moment that they never opened their account of life. All that happened is psychological drama. You thought your thought and emotion is life. It's something that you're making it up. Your thought and your emotion is made up by you. It is your drama. But you think this is life. When the final moment comes, nearly 85% of the people are bewildered because they never got started. They never got started and it's over. Please go and watch this, don't take my word for this. You must. Because you're all young, you must open your account of life. Life should happen, not thought. Thought is just a very flimsy phenomena, okay? It's useful, but the real thing is the phenomena of life, isn't it? But you've been made to believe that because you think you exist. Please check this out with yourself, sit down and spend some time. Because you exist, you may think. Because a whole bunch of people or a majority of the people are having mental diarrhea all their life, they think their thought is supreme. No. As my hand moves, if I want it goes here, otherwise it sits here. Similarly, your mind should be. If you want it should go, if you don't want it must sit here. Then it's a useful mind. Right now, it's in a state of diarrhea. And you think this is great intellect, it is not. It has created more problems on this planet than solutions. In creating problems, there is no intelligence. In creating solutions, there is intelligence, isn't it? Hello? So as life becomes more convenient, we start suffering it more because we start complaining about all the instruments of convenience. You think it's intelligent? Maybe it's intellectual, but it's not intelligent.
I've got time for just maybe a couple more questions, if that's okay with your time. Let's go to the girl on the front bench here.
Pranam Sadhguru. I'm asking this question with the deepest respect, but there are some people who kind of debunk the idea of spiritualism and mysticism.
What?
Debunk.
Oh.
And like I'm sure you've faced a lot of skepticism in your career, and I just wanted to know like what you have to say to these people who are skeptical of the kind of reaching a higher level of awareness of the world that you've claimed to have.
Bear with me because I am very skeptical too. I am a super skeptic about everything because too much trash has been sold for a long time. Really, I'm saying this may upset a lot of people. If you ask 3 questions, 90% of the scriptures on the planet will collapse. They cannot withstand questions. They have always survived saying they come from an authority that you cannot question. Skepticism is good, but suspicion is sickness. Being skeptical means you don't take things for granted. You want to explore and see. But you don't even want to explore, you just want to conclude. That is stupidity, okay? So, one reason why they're going about like this everywhere, which was me also, is because of organized religion. which has imposed all kinds of things on people, most ridiculous things that it doesn't make sense to anybody, but it comes from an authority, so you're supposed to believe it. Extreme forms of organized religion you are seeing in some parts of the world. Others have learned to, sugarcoat themselves, but essentially it's the same. The difference between a spiritual process and religion is this. The moment you say, I'm religious, you refer to yourself as a believer. When you say, I'm a believer, in a vague way you're saying, I'm a bullshitter. Yes. When you say, I believe, what you're saying is, something that I do not know, I have concluded. Why do you believe something? Because you are not straight enough to admit that you do not know, isn't it? Yes or no? You're not straight enough to admit, I do not know. What is the problem? What is the problem? What I know, what I do not know, I do not know. What is the problem with this? Now, whatever you do not know, you believe. Belief gives you confidence, but without clarity. Confidence without clarity is the biggest disaster on this planet. What we need is clarity. Unfortunately, we have chosen confidence. You believe something, it gives you confidence. So what this means is, if you do something stupid right now, tonight your intelligence will bother you. Why did I do this? But once you have your stupidity God endorsed or scripture endorsed, you can do idiotic things with absolute confidence all your life, without ever turning back and looking. A child can see you're stupid, but you will do it with total confidence because you believe. The moment you say, I'm spiritual, you say, I'm a seeker. You are a genuine seeker only when you realize you don't know a thing about this. I do not know is a tremendous possibility. Only and only when you see I do not know, the longing to know, the seeking to know, and the possibility of knowing becomes a reality. Otherwise, everything I do not know, I just believe. Why? Because somebody said it. It doesn't matter who said it, with all due respect to all of them. What is your problem? Simply admitting what I do not know as I do not know, because you think I do not know is a shameful state. No. In the yogic culture, we've always been cultured to identify with our ignorance, because our knowledge is very small. It doesn't matter, you may be in a university full of books, but our knowledge is very small, our ignorance is boundless. If you identify with your ignorance, you will be a constant seeker. If you identify with your knowledge, you become a tyrant.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid that is all we've got time for. Please remain seated whilst our guest leaves the room, but firstly, join me in giving a massive thank you to the Sadhguru.